Jesse, we have asked the question already before on the show, but we have to ask it once again. Is Scott Boras washed? He might be. Because
He might be because he lost a client today, Derek. He lost a client today. And I wouldn't. I mean, I can certainly understand why this happened, but I also am a little surprised that anytime someone moves on from Scott Boras as their agent, because that's not something we see very often.
It's not the direction people typically go as you advance in your career. You typically move towards Scott Boras and not away from him. But
Correct.
We have this tweet today confirming that the Arizona Diamondbacks' newest starting pitcher has parted ways with Scott Boras. That would be Jordan Montgomery. According to Kiley McDaniel, left-handed pitcher Jordan Montgomery has hired Wasserman's Joel Wolfe and Nick Chanock as his agents. Per sources, Montgomery was one of the Boras Four who were unsigned late into the free agency. I projected he would get 5 years, $106 million, and he eventually signed for 1 year, $25 million with Arizona on March 26th. First, I would like to say that the Boras Four sound like what you would label people that went through some sort of disaster, like people that fell in a well or something, right?
I was thinking maybe like a rocket ship.
Yeah, like a rocket ship. Yeah. They were lost astronauts that were lost around space, and then they got them back successfully. It's the Boras Four, but
I mean that's not too far off, Derek.
They were lost, definitely.
They were lost in free agency, almost forgotten.
For them, they only made like a combined $100 million.
That's
That sucks.
Yeah, I mean that's as bad as suffering gets in this country.
Right. Well, no, and I mean what she's saying there, honestly. Okay, so there's some truth that we thought obviously that someone like Jordan Montgomery would get a bigger contract as far as years go. Yeah. And I think it does show how important that peace of mind is for players, especially players who are the age Montgomery is and the place where he's at in his career, that he felt like this should be that point where he gets that big contract. And it just allows them to feel like they're going to be in one place for a long period of time, allow their family to kind of put down some roots and kids go to school and all of that. A 1 year deal doesn't do that. You might not even unpack boxes on a 1 year deal if you're living here in Arizona,
Yeah.
I can kind of understand the disappointment from the player that it's not the annual value, because $25 million is kind of higher than projected that he was going to get on an annual contract. It's just, again, the fact that he knows he's probably going to have to pick up and leave after this season.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about this when the Diamondbacks signed this deal. Like Jordan Montgomery had a good enough walk year that he shouldn't have gotten just a 1 year contract, right? I mean, I guess you could sort of think of it as a 2 year contract. It's pretty likely it winds up being a 2 year guarantee. But even a 2 year guarantee, like Jordan Montgomery had a 3.20 ERA and almost 200 innings and was the number 2 starter for the team that won the World Series. Like you can't really have a better walk year than the season that Jordan Montgomery just had. And it appears that he was not too happy with the way that his free agency went, and understandably so. It's not just that the final dollar figure, the final guarantee being what it was. It's also that he didn't know where he was pitching until, this was agreed upon like 2 days before the major league season started. You can understand any pitcher, regardless of the kind of money that might come, the advantages that might come with waiting, like these are human beings. They don't want to have their routines messed up like that going into the season. I don't know for sure how much of a factor that was for Montgomery, but it seems reasonable to think it could have been a part of this.
Elise says the Boras Four sounds like a supervillain team. That's a great comparison. I think Ryan here where my thought process is going is that now we need Gallen to leave Boras so we can extend him before free agency, right? And that's it's crazy to say that, and I know it's kind of a joke, and I'm kind of joking about it, but am I really? No, I'm not, because we know Scott Boras' track record for re-signing or signing an extension or re-signing with the same team. It makes it not very likely that we are going to see Gallen in a Diamondbacks uniform after his contract is over. But maybe if he does leave Boras like Montgomery did, maybe that changes the chances of that happening. Again, players aren't looking for technically the absolute most money they could get, if in turn they can get an amount that satisfies them, that it feels that's worth their value and allows them to stay in one place for a number of years.
Sure. It depends on the player though, right? I think some players, I don't know, out of the Boras Four, maybe there were guys who came to Boras and were like, just get me the most money on an average annual value. I want to bet on myself and test this thing out next year and try to do better. But based on how this played out, I'm going to guess maybe Jordan Montgomery wasn't one of those people. I'm not totally sure.
Well, we do have a comment that he made from his introductory press conference here with the Arizona Diamondbacks that kind of appears a little different now that this has happened. This is what Jordan Montgomery had to say in regards to this deal with Arizona and it being a 1-year deal.
I mean, sometimes things don't work out the way we plan it. I'm not the one creating the plan and just trying to go along with it. So I'm happy to be a D-back and try and help this team out best I can.
I'm not the one creating the plan. In my mind, Derek, there are two ways to interpret that. One of them is that I believe that Jordan Montgomery is a Christian or a person of faith in some capacity. And that when he's saying I'm not the one creating the plan, he very well could be referring to God being the one creating the plan. Which yeah, I mean, I think that's a very real possibility. I'm not totally sure. The other way that I could read this is I'm not the one creating the plan is him saying that Scott Boras,
it's this guy in the powder blue jumper next
who's
to me
creating the plan, and it sort of sounds like maybe he didn't really agree with the plan that was set forth for him.
Yeah, I mean, and that could be it. And of course, you have to live with it at the end of the day because you as an athlete, you have to focus on being ready. You have to focus on preparing for the season, especially when you're not in a camp, having a coaching staff help you prepare. It's very, you do have Scott Boras, who has a ton of resources and is as good as a team when it comes to having resources to train you and to get you prepared for a season. However, it's still different when you're relying on that person to take care of all of that stuff on the business end. And in some cases, he's agreeing to or not or denying deals that maybe you don't even know about, maybe just because it didn't fit your particular requests, he might have passed and maybe those deals would have been better for you than signing a 1-year deal with $25 million. I know we are happy that Jordan Montgomery is here and we know that he is playing now, especially with a new agent, for his big contract after this season. Most likely he could still opt in and he could still be a Diamondback for another year. It depends on how everything goes. I just think that this is, you could ask, could wonder if it's going to be a distraction. It could be more of a motivating factor for him this season that we maybe even see the best out of him, still to be determined.